And I want to start off my presentation with a few numbers. Up on the top of the page, 15 pages. That's the number of finished pages of student writing that a student is expected to do in an average undergraduate English class here at Goodwin College. Some of the classes it's a little bit more, but 15 pages is a minimum. Now that's finished writing. It doesn't include drafts, it doesn't include process work or outlines or journalizing. That's 15 pages of work that's been proofread, that's been cited and sourced, and that is supposedly professional grade, publishable writing. That's 15 pages per class. Now the number 50, that's the number of English sections that we run at Goodwin College per semester. A number of English classes. Sometimes it's a few more, sometimes it's a few less, but on average we run about 50 classes of undergraduate English every semester. And so then the third number there is we have 3 semesters, because we have a summer semester here at Goodwin. So you multiply that all together, and that means that Goodwin College students in a single year, just in English classes, write 2,250 pages of finished, proofread, publishable work that they spend a lot of time researching, organizing, writing, revising, and tinkering with in various ways to create publishable, finalized pages of text. So that's an awful lot of writing, and it represents an even larger number of man-hours that the students put in to each of those pages of writing. So taking this a little bit further, we take these 2,250 pages and we multiply it by the number of colleges and universities in the United States, which is 4,495, and we come up with a huge number, greater than 10 million. 10 million pages of revised, sourced, organized, publishable writing that students, undergraduate students in the United States, do every year. And of course, that's a radical underestimate. That's a huge underestimate because Goodwin College is a relatively small school. Most other schools have larger numbers of English classes that they offer. Most other schools even may require a larger number of pages, finished pages of work per class. But at the very least, that's 10 million pages of student work that's written in the United States every year. And so what happens to all of that brilliant, creative, thoughtful, writing that students do every year? Well, typically it enters this cycle represented on the slide here. The student spends a great amount of time alone, struggling to crank out paragraph, sentence, word after word in order to compile those 10 million pages of finished writing. And after they struggle and sweat and bleed their way through the experience, they turn around, they hand it in to the teacher, and then the teacher has kind of a parallel experience where he or she spends an enormous number of hours sitting at a desk alone, having usually kind of frustrating, sometimes humorous, sometimes enlightening, but usually pretty grueling experience grading all the papers and making comments and remarks and feedback. And when the teacher has done that, the teacher gives it back to the student with all their comments and annotations and commas drawn in and everything like that. And what does the student do with it? Chances are, if they're scrupulous, the student will put it into a file somewhere. Most of the time, the student probably puts it into the circular file, the garbage, and there it stays. The process starts again with the next assignment, and it goes round and round and round for all eternity. So that's kind of the conventional method of pedagogy that we have here in the United States. And to me, it reminds me very much of a treadmill in a void. A treadmill without, that doesn't go anywhere or that doesn't do anything, that simply circulates, and the students and teachers alike just run for whatever motivations they have. Obviously to get a good grade, to finish their degrees, to get their job, to hone their skills. But ultimately, there's a sense of futility that I can't help feeling in the entire setup. It actually reminds me of a quotation from the famous author Samuel Johnson, who said that no man but a blockhead ever wrote except for money. And so I don't know if you would necessarily agree with that assessment. I don't know if I would say necessarily no one but a blockhead ever wrote for money, but I would say that writing is, by its nature, designed to do things, to communicate, to make a change in the world, to reach out and affect other people's lives. And I feel like when we get into the cycle of just writing for the sake of writing, and grading and returning papers for the sake of grading and returning them, sometimes you feel a little bit like a blockhead. So I tried to think about what could we do to try to develop this situation in a way that would be profitable and beneficial for everyone involved. My question is, how can we tap this large reserve of potential energy, all of these millions of pages of professional grade work that students are cranking out every year, and use it the way that a hydroelectric dam uses water to do work. And so the work I think that we can use this student work to do is specifically to make classrooms more connected to communities, to make writing instruction more authentic and more engaging, and also to help local economies and to support nonprofit organizations. All three of these goals, I feel, are goals that could be accomplished if we put all of the work that students are doing to work, instead of allowing them to just stay running forever on this treadmill in a void. So one of the ways, of course there are many ways that we might think about how we teach undergraduate English as a way of tapping into this potential energy. But what we've been doing this year in English 325, which we'll be talking about tonight, is we've been partnering with 3 specific organizations. Kids Save Connecticut, which is a nonprofit devoted to helping prevent child abuse and neglect. National Credit Fixers, which is a private company that's devoted to helping people fix their credit scores. And the Connecticut State Police Union, which is obviously the union for the Connecticut State Police. And we've been writing annual reports for these organizations. All of these organizations, for one reason or another, although they don't, they're not required to write annual reports, an annual report can be an effective communications tool, whether for nonprofit and for-profit organizations. And we thought it might be nice if we could reach out to these groups and help write annual reports in a way that taught students specific business writing skills, but also helped these organizations do the work that they do to reach out to new clients, to share their success with investors and donors, and to market and brand themselves and to spread their message. So that's what we did. And, I started out the class, I don't really know very much about writing annual reports. I'd never done it before, so we reached out to an expert. This is the book that we use, The Writer's Guide to Annual Reports, which is pretty much the standard guidebook for writing annual reports. And this is the author of the Writer's Guide to Annual Reports. And we have a couple of very proactive students in our class who reached out to Robert Roth, who's this worldwide, brilliant, accomplished expert in the field of writing annual reports. And he actually came into our classrooms via Skype and was able to share some advice with us about some of the drafts that our teams had started on their annual reports. It was interesting because he came into the room, it was like, up on this big screen, just like on Star Trek, and the students came up to him and presented their ideas so far, and he had some suggestions, and he had some criticism and some advice, and some of the students, some of the teams really accepted his suggestions and ran with them. Other teams decided that, although he's a big, experienced and accomplished and professional fellow, they still didn't really feel like, his advice was right for them, so they went their separate ways. But either way, it was a valuable experience just to watch him working through these questions. We also drew on some more local talent. Up on the left here, we got Phil and Caleb, who came to our classroom to share their experience writing annual reports for Goodwin College, specifically from a graphic design perspective. We got Mike Rotondo, our faculty member in accounting, to help us with some of the thornier aspects of financial writing. We had Dr. Ernie Varela, come to class and give the students a pep talk in how to face the class with verve and elan. He's from the Management and Leadership School. So all of these different disciplines came together to help these students to try to work through the various problems that they face writing these annual reports. Along the way, we also did a scholarly poster, which you can see on the second floor of Goodwin College. Here in the poster, you can see some early drafts of the student reports. You can see some of the ideas that students started to hash out about their key messages. And I also did some research as part of putting this poster together in sort of the pedagogical background of this kind of class. And I found some interesting discoveries. One of my major sources for research was one of the leading publications in business education, the American Journal of Business Education. And in that journal, interestingly, over the last couple of years, there have been some significant research that has been done in the kind of class that we've been doing here at Goodwin. Clark and White, that was from 2010, they did a study in which they determined, quote, a quality university business education program must include an experiential learning component. So that's obviously what we're trying to provide through our business writing experience, this kind of experiential learning model. A little more recently, a couple of other researchers came to the conclusion that client projects, both as a capstone class or as a project within a class, require the highest level of cognitive development and correspond to the highest level of experiential learning. This client project is obviously what we're doing, teaming up with these clients to write annual reports for these specific businesses. So that just gives a sense of some of the pedagogical background. And then, so that was the idea. That was the whole setup for the class. And then the students took these ideas and they ran with them. And what you can see here in these pictures is basically what you saw every class. Every class was basically the students working in their teams to define their own goals and figure out how best to reach the objectives that they had established about how to communicate their key message through their annual report. This was the original syllabus that I had drawn up before the class began. As you can see, it's very detailed, and since I'm an English teacher, I always spend a lot of time trying to make every week of the class correspond to a specific set of skills and objectives that I want to target. And originally when I designed this class, I had the syllabus all set up so that every week the students had a specific writing assignment that they did as a team and a specific writing assignment that they did as individuals. And they hit up the various parts of the annual report in a very organized and logical fashion. But around probably February 5th, about the end of what you see here, it occurred to me, and I think to most of the students, that this scheme was not really working for exactly what we wanted to do. The students, by this point, even early on in the semester, already knew that their specific target partner organizations had very specific messages that they needed to focus on, which took them in kind of slightly different directions. So this standardized model of an entire class working from the same syllabus to do a prearranged set of activities week by week was simply not going to work. So we actually just basically abandoned the syllabus altogether. What you see here is some examples of student minutes. One requirement was that students take minutes of their weekly activities and record what they had accomplished and what their goals were for the next week. And I originally supplied a form that was the standard form that all students were supposed to take the minutes in, but because all of our groups are such unique groups of individuals with their own backgrounds and expertise, they all developed their own format for taking the minutes. And so you can see of the three groups, they have three completely different strategies, but they were all able to work together to use their unique strategies to develop three very unique annual reports. These are the three groups on the top and the covers of their annual reports. Down below, starting off on the side, the National Credit Fixers team, they had a very specific idea that they wanted to highlight the credibility and the dependability and the personality of the company that they were working with. They were impressed by how much the company was admired by the clients who had worked with them, and they wanted to communicate that sense of credibility, what persuasive writers call ethos, throughout every step of their annual report. So that's what they focused on. The group in the middle here, they were the Kids Safe Connecticut group, working with this image of child abuse and neglect. Obviously, as you can tell from the cover of their report, their focus was an emotional one. They wanted to make an emotional connection with their audience, which was slightly different from what National Credit Fixers was doing. But right throughout, from the very first image on the top, on the cover of their assignment, all the way through every page of their work, they managed to try to reach out to people who would be reading this report and get them invested emotionally in the importance of the work that Kids Safe Connecticut was doing. And so that comes across very clearly in their report. And then finally, so that's kind of what persuasive writers would call the pathos side of things. And then to follow up and to make it all very even, we have a representation of ethos here in the Connecticut State Police Academy Alumni Educational Fund. This group was committed to designing a report that specifically stated the decisions that this organization had made, the business model that they were pursuing, and they wanted to create a very crisp, clean, business-like presentation of what the business realities were for this particular scholarship fund in 2013 to 2014. And as you can see, they're designed very crisp, very reflective of the idea of logos, to use another one of those persuasive terms. So 3 annual reports, but 3 very different takes on what an annual report should do, 3 very different ideas about what the audience of an annual report should be, but all successful in their own way. So along the way, not only did these students hopefully learn a lot about how to design, write, and put together an annual report of this nature, but also they helped homeowners who are trying to repair their credit. They helped children who are being abused and neglected. They helped students trying to get an education, all by helping their partner organization do their job more effectively, by creating materials that these partner organizations can use to help their community and to work with people who need assistance to help them. So it's a great example of trying to do 2 things at once in a mutually reinforcing way. Going forward, we hope to continue to develop this class, English 325 Business Writing, to partner up with more local organizations, more nonprofits, and other sorts of organizations to develop communication materials for them. We also have a few other classes that we're designing around the same idea. We have a social media class that's going to start this summer, and in that social media class, obviously the content is that students are supposed to develop blogs and websites and Facebook pages to show them how to do that. But they're also, the key element of that class is that these students are going to identify specific social goals or economic or marketing goals that they want to accomplish with their websites, and they're going to specifically use this class as a way of disseminating the messages that they're trying to disseminate, either as entrepreneurs, as small business owners, as people trying to market themselves in the job market, or any number of other pursuits. In the middle here, this word cloud represents a class that we just started this semester called Narratives of Healing and Healthcare. In this class, students who are primarily in the nursing program reflect on the emotional and spiritual side of providing healthcare. But rather than just writing papers for me or even writing papers for each other, these students are designing blogs where they share readership with people, other healthcare providers, and other student healthcare providers from around the country and around the globe, so they can participate in a discussion about the emotional issues that go along with healthcare workplace. And then finally, this final word cloud on this slide represents a class that we're going to start in the fall. This is a science writing class that the English department and the science department are designing conjointly. The main goal is to teach students to express themselves in writing more effectively in a science environment. But we're going to try to use the techniques of this class to make sure that the students who do writing this class are partnering with specific local issues. They're trying to find environmental issues, public health issues, issues in their neighborhood that they can research and actually make an actual contribution to what we know about the economy, the ecology, and the finances of central Connecticut, to try to make a real contribution to what we know and to our communities moving forward. All of these work together under a service learning model where rather than having the campus isolated from the community, campus and community are partnering to strengthen one another. At the same time, we're trying to break down walls between the kinds of writing and the kinds of work that students are doing in the classroom and the kind of work that they'll be doing when they get out into the workforce. So by bringing all of these things together, we hope to be able to use the creativity, the insight, the skill in problem solving, and the skill in self-expression that Goodwin students bring into the classroom every day to try to help the community and make the world a better place. So that's what we're doing this semester. Now I'd actually like to turn the floor over to the first of 3 student teams that are going to present their work and explain what they did with their partner organizations this semester. The first group that we're going to hear from is National Credit Fixers, so I'll give them a couple minutes to come on up here and get organized, and then we'll be hearing from them about their annual report. So thank you very much, and let's turn it over to the next team.